Part 1. The sky above Earth turned dark when the alien ships arrived. They came without warning, appearing in space like giant metal monsters. Each ship was enormous, bigger than anything humans had ever built. There were hundreds of them, blocking out the stars and casting shadows over the entire planet. Admiral Krell stood on the bridge of his flagship and smiled. He was a Zarvok, a member of a race that had conquered 47 worlds. His skin was gray and rough like stone. He had 3 eyes that glowed red in the darkness. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, preparing weapons that could destroy cities in seconds. "This will be easy," Krell said to his second-in-command, a younger Zarvok named Vesh. "Look at their primitive technology. They still use chemical rockets and metal bullets. We will own this planet by tomorrow." Vesh nodded, checking his screens. "Should we contact them, Admiral? Give them a chance to surrender?" "Yes," Krell replied. "It is tradition. We are conquerors, but we are not without mercy. If they bow to us now, we will let most of them live." Down on Earth, in a military bunker deep underground, General Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet through satellite cameras. He was an older man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had fought in 3 wars and seen terrible things, but nothing had prepared him for this. Around him, world leaders appeared on video screens, their faces showing fear and confusion. The President of the United States spoke first. "General Morrison, what are our options?" Jake looked at the screens showing the massive alien warships. "Honestly, sir, we don't have many. Our missiles can't reach them. Our fighters would be destroyed before they got close. These aliens have technology we can't match, so we just give up?" asked the Chinese premier, anger in his voice. "I didn't say that," Jake replied calmly. "I said we can't match their technology, but we have something else. Something we've been working on for the past 5 years, just in case something like this happened." Katie Sullivan, the Secretary of Defense, leaned forward. "You mean Project Shepard?" "Jake, we agreed that was too dangerous. The psychological effects alone could destroy the volunteers' minds. Better some volunteers than the entire human race," Jake said quietly. "We need to authorize it now before they start shooting." A young officer named Chris Palmer interrupted them. "Sirs, the aliens are broadcasting a message. It's coming through on every frequency." The voice that filled the bunker was harsh and cold, somehow translated into perfect English. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Krell of the Zarvok Empire. You are now our property. You have 12 hours to surrender your governments and military forces. If you refuse, we will demonstrate our power by destroying one of your major cities. Choose wisely." The message ended, leaving silence in the bunker. Katie turned to Jake. "Project Shepard, you really think it will work?" "It's our only chance," Jake said. "The Zarvok are conquerors. They've beaten everyone they've met because everyone tries to fight them with weapons. But humans, we learned a long time ago that the mind is more powerful than any gun." The president made his decision. "Do it. Authorization code Alpha 779er. God help us all." Jake picked up a secure phone and dialed a number that only 12 people on Earth knew. After 2 rings, a woman answered. Commander Amy Chen speaking. "Amy, this is Jake Morrison. Project Shepard is authorized. Start deployment immediately." There was a pause on the other end. Amy Chen was a young officer, only 34 years old, but she was brilliant. She had helped to design Project Shepard from the beginning. "Understood, General. We have 2,000 volunteers ready. They all know what they're signing up for." "Make it count, Commander," Jake said. "The whole world is depending on you." Far beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a facility that didn't appear on any map, Amy Chen stood in a control room filled with computers and medical equipment. Around her, technicians prepared for something that had never been done before. Dr. Marcus Webb, the head psychologist, approached her. His face was pale and worried. "Amy, are you absolutely sure about this? We've only tested this on small groups. The trauma amplification alone could break these people's minds permanently." Amy looked at him with steady eyes. "Marcus, if we don't do this, there won't be any minds left to break. The aliens will kill us all. At least this way we're fighting back." "But at what cost?" Marcus asked. "Whatever it takes," Amy replied. She turned to address the room. "All teams begin final preparations. Volunteers report to deployment stations. This is not a drill." In another part of the facility, Jake Morrison arrived by helicopter. He had left the command bunker and flown across the ocean as fast as possible. Now he stood in a changing room, putting on a pressure suit. A young technician helped him with the helmet. "Sir, are you sure you want to do this? You're a general. You don't have to be in the first wave, Jake smiled sadly. Son, I can't ask 2,000 people to do something I'm not willing to do myself. Besides, I've got plenty of material to work with. 3 wars, remember? I've seen things that would give nightmares to a nightmare. Katie Sullivan's voice came through his radio. Jake, you don't have to prove anything. Let the younger soldiers do this. It's not about proving anything, Katie, Jake said, checking his suit's seals. It's about doing what's necessary. Now stop trying to talk me out of it and make sure those neural transmitters are working properly. Above Earth, Admiral Krell was growing impatient. 6 hours had passed since his ultimatum, and the humans had not responded. It was time to show them what happened to those who ignored the Zarvok Empire. Target the city they call New York, he ordered. Charge the main plasma cannon. We will destroy 10% of it as a demonstration. The Devastator's massive weapon began to glow with blue energy. Every ship in the fleet turned their sensors toward Earth, watching and waiting for the humans to see their power and despair. But then something strange appeared on the sensors. Vesh stared at his screen in confusion. Admiral, I'm detecting multiple launches from the planet's surface. Small objects moving toward our position. Missiles? Krell asked, unconcerned. Their shields could stop any primitive human weapon. No, sir. They're life signs. I'm reading human life signatures. 2,000 of them. They're coming toward us in pressure suits with basic thrusters. No weapons, no explosives, just people. Krell stood up from his command chair and walked to the main view screen. Through the magnification, he could see them now. Humans in simple spacesuits floating through the void toward his mighty fleet. They looked so fragile, so helpless. What were they thinking? Is this some kind of suicide attack? Vesh wondered aloud. Hold your fire, Krell commanded. I want to see what they're planning. It makes no sense to send unarmed people against warships. That decision would prove to be the biggest mistake of Krell's life. Part 2. Jake Morrison floated through space, his heart beating steadily despite the danger. Around him, 1,999 other humans drifted toward the alien fleet. They moved slowly, their small thrusters barely making any sound in the vacuum. Below them, Earth looked beautiful and fragile, a blue marble hanging in the darkness. Through his helmet radio, Jake could hear the breathing of the other volunteers. Some were calm, others nervous. They all knew what was about to happen. They had all been trained for this moment, though training could never really prepare someone for what they were about to do. All units. This is Commander Chen. Amy's voice came through clearly from the control center far below. You are approaching the alien fleet. Remember your training. Don't think about your words, just feel. Let the memories come naturally. The neural transmitters will do the rest. Jake checked his suit systems one more time. Everything was working perfectly. The small device attached to his helmet, no bigger than a coin, would broadcast his thoughts and feelings directly into the alien ships. It was technology that human scientists had developed in secret, combining neuroscience with quantum communication. It had taken years to perfect and billions of dollars. Now they would find out if it actually worked. Commander Chen, this is Morrison. Jake spoke into his radio. We're in position. Beginning approach to individual targets. The 2,000 humans spread out across the fleet. Each person had been assigned to a specific alien ship. Jake's target was the biggest one, the flagship called the Devastator. He used his thrusters to guide himself toward the massive vessel, feeling tiny and insignificant next to its enormous hull. On the bridge of the Devastator, Admiral Krell watched the human approach. Through the view screen, he could see the old man clearly now. The human's face was visible through his helmet's transparent faceplate. He looked tired, weathered by age and experience. But his eyes were sharp and focused. What is he doing? Vesh asked, confused by the whole situation. Open a communication channel, Krell ordered. Let's hear what this foolish human has to say before we vaporize him. The communication system crackled to life. The human's voice was calm and friendly, like he was talking to an old friend rather than an alien conqueror. Hello up there. Name's Jake. Just wanted to have a chat before things get ugly. Krell's mandibles clicked together in what might have been a laugh. You come here alone, unarmed, to talk? Your species is even more foolish than I thought. Are you here to beg for mercy? Not exactly, Jake replied, still floating peacefully outside the view screen. I'm here to tell you a story. You got a few minutes to listen? I have no interest in your stories, human. Surrender your planet or watch it burn. See, that's the thing, Jake continued, ignoring the threat. You Zarvok, you're used to winning fights with bigger guns and stronger ships. That's how you've conquered all those other worlds, right? You show up, flex your muscles, and everyone either fights back the same way and loses, or they give up without trying. Simple and effective. Krell said nothing, but he didn't cut off the communication either. Something about the human's calm voice made him want to keep listening. Jake went on. But humans? We figured out a long time ago that wars aren't really won with weapons. They're won up here. He tapped the side of his helmet. In the mind. In the soul. That's where the real battles happen. Across the fleet, similar conversations were starting. Lieutenant Peter Hayes floated near a Zarvok destroyer, talking to whoever was listening inside. His voice was soft and sad. I had a daughter once, Peter said. Her name was Sarah. She was 8 years old when she got sick. Cancer, the doctors said. There was nothing they could do. Inside the destroyer, a young Zarvok gunner named Thax listened to the strange human. Why was he talking about his dead child? What did this have to do with anything? Peter continued, his voice heavy with old pain. I sat by her bed for 3 days while she died. 3 days of watching her get weaker and weaker. She was so brave. She kept telling me it was okay, that she wasn't scared. But I was scared. I was terrified. And when she finally stopped breathing, when her hand went cold in mine, something inside me died too. Thax felt uncomfortable. He didn't want to hear this. It made him think of his own family, his own fears about losing them. On another ship, Sergeant Linda Brooks spoke about watching her brother die in an accident. Corporal Danny Price described finding his best friend's burned body after an explosion. All around the fleet, 2,000 humans shared their most painful memories. Their deepest traumas, their darkest moments. Back at the Devastator, Jake Morrison was just getting started. You want to know what war really is, Admiral Krell? He asked. It's not about plasma cannons or shields or who has the faster ship. War's about suffering. It's about creating pain and living with that pain forever. I am familiar with war, human, Krell said coldly. I have conquered worlds, have you? Jake's voice was gentle, almost pitying.
Have you really experienced what war does to people?
Let me tell you about a man named Rodriguez. He was my squad mate in a battle 20 years ago. We were pinned down by enemy fire. He took a bullet to the stomach. I watched him bleed out over 30 minutes because the medic couldn't reach us. You know what he said to me while he was dying? Krell didn't answer, but he found himself unable to look away from the human's eyes. He said, "Tell my kids I love them." Jake continued. That's all. Just that simple message. And I've carried those words with me every day since. Every single day for 20 years, I wake up and remember that I couldn't save him. That's war, Admiral. That's what it really costs. Something strange was happening to Krell. As the human spoke, images began forming in his mind. He saw a battlefield, smelled smoke and blood, heard screaming. But these weren't his memories. They couldn't be. He had never been to this place, never seen these things. Yet they felt completely real. What is this? Krell said, his voice uncertain now. What are you doing to me? In the control center beneath the Pacific, Amy Chen watched the neural readings on her screens. The transmitters were working even better than they had hoped. The alien brain structure was different from human brains, but the emotional centers were similar enough. The Zarvok could feel empathy, could experience shared emotions, and now they were experiencing human emotions, human memories, human pain. Neural resonance is holding steady, Dr. Marcus Webb reported, though his hands were shaking. The aliens are receiving the full emotional impact of the memories. It's like they're living through the experiences themselves. Keep monitoring, Amy ordered. If anyone's vitals get too stressed, we pull them back immediately. But none of the volunteers wanted to be pulled back. They had all agreed to this mission, knowing what it would cost them. To weaponize their trauma, they had to relive it completely, had to feel every bit of the pain all over again. It was the hardest thing any of them had ever done. Jake Morrison felt tears running down his face inside his helmet as he continued talking to Admiral Krell. He was describing another memory now, a village where civilians had been caught in crossfire, children crying over their dead parents. Every word was torture to speak, but he forced himself to continue, and with every word, the neural transmitter sent his emotions directly into Krell's mind. The Zarvok Admiral staggered backward from the view screen. His 3 eyes were wide with shock and horror. In his mind, he wasn't on his ship anymore. He was in that village, seeing what Jake had seen, feeling what Jake had felt. The guilt, the shame, the crushing weight of knowing you had caused innocent people to suffer. Make it stop, Krell whispered. Part 3. The pain spreading through the Zarvok fleet was unlike anything they had ever experienced. It wasn't physical pain. Their bodies were fine, unharmed. But their minds were being invaded by memories and emotions that didn't belong to them, yet felt completely real. On the bridge of the Devastator, Admiral Krell fell to his knees. His crew watched in horror as their commander, the mighty warrior who had conquered dozens of worlds, crumbled before their eyes. Vesh rushed to his side, but then he felt it too. A wave of crushing sadness and guilt washed over him, so powerful it made him gasp. Jake Morrison continued floating outside the view screen, his voice steady despite the tears streaming down his face. He was talking about a different memory now, one he had buried deep inside for years. "There was a city we were ordered to bomb," Jake said quietly. "Military intelligence said there was an enemy command center there. We flew in at dawn. I was piloting the lead aircraft. We dropped our payload right on target. Perfect mission, they told us afterward." He paused, his voice cracking slightly. What they didn't tell us until later was that the intelligence was wrong. There was no command center, just an apartment building full of families. We killed 200 civilians that morning. 200 people who were just eating breakfast, getting ready for work, playing with their children. Gone in seconds because I followed orders without questioning them. Inside Krell's mind, the memory played out in vivid detail. He saw the bombs falling, heard the explosions, felt the guilt and horror of realizing what had been done. The screams of survivors searching through rubble for their loved ones echoed in his head. It was unbearable. "Please," Krell begged, though he didn't know who he was begging. "Stop this," but Jake didn't stop. None of the 2,000 humans stopped. They had a mission to complete, and they would see it through no matter how much it hurt them. Across the fleet, similar scenes were unfolding. Sergeant Linda Brooks floated near a cruiser, speaking about the day her younger brother died in a training accident. She had been the commanding officer that day. She had approved the exercise that killed him. "I see his face every night when I close my eyes," Linda said, her voice hollow. "He trusted me. He looked up to me his whole life, and I got him killed because I didn't check the equipment properly, because I was tired and cut corners. That's something I have to live with forever." The Zarvok crew inside that cruiser felt her guilt as if it were their own. They imagined losing their own siblings, their own family members because of their own mistakes. The emotional weight was crushing. On another ship, Corporal Danny Price talked about his best friend who had died in a helicopter crash. Danny had been supposed to be on that helicopter too, but he had traded shifts with his friend at the last minute. "His name was Kevin," Danny said. "He took my place because I wanted to go to my girlfriend's birthday party." Such a small thing, right? Just a birthday party. But that decision meant he died instead of me. I got to live. I got to have a future. And he got buried in a closed casket because there wasn't enough left to show his parents. The survivor's guilt poured through the neural transmitters like poison. The aliens receiving these emotions felt Danny's pain, his constant questioning of why he deserved to live when Kevin had died. It was a wound that never healed, a question with no answer. Dr. Marcus Webb watched the readings in the control center and felt sick. The psychological damage being inflicted on the aliens was enormous. But the damage being done to the human volunteers was almost as bad. They were being forced to fully relive their worst traumas, to amplify those emotions and broadcast them. Some of the volunteers were sobbing uncontrollably. Others stared blankly ahead, their minds retreating from the pain. "Amy, we need to consider pulling some of them back," Marcus said urgently. "Look at these stress levels. Some of them are approaching psychological breaking points." Amy Chen's face was pale but determined. No one gets pulled back unless they're in physical danger. They all volunteered knowing what this would cost. We honor that choice by letting them complete the mission, even if it destroys them. "Even then," Amy said quietly. "Because if we stop now, if we fail, then their sacrifice means nothing. Earth gets destroyed, and they still have to live with the trauma. At least this way, their pain saves the world." Back in space, Jake Morrison had moved on to another memory. His voice was softer now, almost gentle, but the words were no less devastating. "You ever wonder why humans are so good at hurting each other?" he asked Admiral Krell, who was still on his knees, trembling. "It's because we've been doing it for thousands of years. We've perfected it. We've found ways to cause pain that you Zarvok probably never even imagined." Jake's tone wasn't boastful. If anything, he sounded sad, ashamed of what humanity had done to itself over the centuries. We've committed genocides against our own people, Jake continued. Killed millions because they look different or believe different things. We've invented torture methods specifically designed to break the human mind without killing the body. We've built weapons that can destroy entire cities, and we've used them. On ourselves. On our own planet. Our own species. The images flooded into Krell's mind. Concentration camps. Nuclear explosions. Children starving while food rotted in warehouses because of politics. Slavery. Wars fought over resources that everyone could have shared. The sheer scale of human cruelty to other humans was overwhelming. And the worst part? Jake said, we remember all of it. Every atrocity, every act of cruelty, every moment of suffering. It's all recorded in our history books, our stories, our collective memory. And now through these neural transmitters, you get to experience it too. All of it. Everything we've done to each other over thousands of years. Krell's mind was breaking under the weight of so much suffering. He experienced the Holocaust, the atomic bombings, the Rwandan genocide, the countless smaller horrors that filled human history. He felt them all at once, a tsunami of pain and guilt and shame that no mind was meant to bear. Around the fleet, Zarvok soldiers were collapsing at their stations. Some were screaming. Others sat in silence, tears streaming from their 3 eyes. A few had stopped responding entirely, their minds temporarily shutting down to protect themselves from the overwhelming emotional assault. Vesh managed to crawl to the communication console. With shaking hands, he opened a channel to the other ships in the fleet. What he saw on the screens horrified him. Every ship was in the same condition. Crews unable to function, commanders on the floor, weapons charged but no one able to fire them. What kind of monsters are these humans? Vesh whispered. Jake heard the question through his helmet radio. We're not monsters, he replied gently. We're survivors. There's a difference. Monsters enjoy causing pain. We just know how to do it when we have no other choice. And right now, Admiral Krell, you're not giving us any other choice. Lieutenant Peter Hayes, floating near his assigned destroyer, was describing his daughter's final hours in heartbreaking detail, the way she had tried to comfort him even as she was dying. The sound of the machine stopping when her heart finally gave out. The feeling of her body growing cold in his arms. A parent should never have to bury their child, Peter said, his voice breaking. It goes against everything natural. Every instinct screams that you should have protected them, saved them, taken their place. But you couldn't. You had to just sit there and watch them die, and then you have to keep living afterward, carrying that pain every single day. The Zarvok, who heard this, thought of their own children. They imagined losing them. The hypothetical became real in their minds thanks to the neural transmitters, and the pain was unbearable. Some of them tried to shut off their communication systems to block out the human voices, but it was too late. The emotional connection had been established. The memories were already in their heads. Part 4 Admiral Krell tried to stand, but his legs wouldn't support him. The human's voice continued, relentless and gentle at the same time. Every word sent new waves of pain through his mind. He had thought himself strong, a warrior who had seen battle and emerged victorious. But this was different. This wasn't a fight he could win with weapons or tactics. You're probably wondering how we can do this to you, Jake Morrison said, still floating calmly outside the view screen. How we can share these terrible memories so easily. The answer is simple. We've learned to live with them. Every human carries pain like this. Some more, some less, but we all have our scars, our traumas, our regrets. Jake's voice grew softer, almost kind. The thing is, Admiral, you came here thinking you were the predators and we were the prey. But you made a mistake. You assumed that because we don't have ships as big as yours, we're weak. You thought technology was the only thing that mattered in war. He paused, letting his words sink in. But humans learned something a long time ago. The strongest weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's the ability to endure suffering and keep going. We've survived plagues that killed half our population. We've survived world wars that destroyed entire continents. We've survived our own worst impulses and somehow found reasons to keep building, keep hoping, keep trying. In the control center beneath the Pacific Ocean, Amy Chen monitored the alien fleet's status. Their shields were still up. Their weapons were still charged. But their crews were broken. The psychological assault was working better than anyone had dared hope. How much longer can the volunteers maintain this? Dr. Marcus Webb asked, his voice tight with worry. Amy checked the medical readings. Most of them are holding steady. A few are showing signs of severe stress, but they're all still transmitting. They're all still fighting. This isn't fighting, Marcus said bitterly. This is torture. For them and for the aliens. Would you prefer the aliens destroy our cities instead? Amy replied sharply. This is war, Marcus. It's never clean. It's never fair. We use what weapons we have. Marcus fell silent, knowing she was right but hating it all the same. On the bridge of the Devastator, Vesh managed to pull himself up to a console. His hands shook as he tried to target the human floating outside their ship. One shot from their point defense laser would vaporize the old man. And his voice. Stop the pain, but Vesh's finger hesitated over the firing button. In his mind, he saw Rodriguez dying on that battlefield, felt Jake's guilt and helplessness. He saw Sarah's face as she took her last breath, felt Peter's grief. He experienced Danny's survivor guilt, Linda's shame, and 1,000 other moments of human suffering. How could he kill someone who had already been through so much? Admiral, Vesh said weakly. Should I fire? Krell looked up at his second in command. The Admiral's 3 eyes were unfocused, his face slack. He had stopped trying to resist the flood of emotions. Instead, he had surrendered to them, letting himself experience the full weight of human history. No, Krell whispered. We cannot fight this. There is no defense against it. Sergeant Linda Brooks, floating near her target cruiser, had moved beyond her brother's death to other memories. She spoke of a civilian massacre she had witnessed but been unable to stop, of finding bodies in a destroyed village, including children no older than 5. Her voice was flat, emotionless, as if the only way she could speak these words was to disconnect from the feelings behind them. But the neural transmitters didn't care about her detachment. They broadcast the raw emotions underneath her calm voice. The horror, the rage at her own helplessness, the nightmares that had plagued her for years. The Zarvok crew inside the cruiser felt all of it. I used to wonder why I survived when they didn't, Linda said. Why I got to keep living while innocent people died. I don't have an answer. There is no answer. Some things just happen, and all you can do is carry the memory and try not to let it destroy you. One of the Zarvok inside the ship, a female named Zara, began to weep openly. She had children at home. The thought of them dying while she stood by helplessly was more than she could bear. Even though it was just a hypothetical, even though it was someone else's memory, the pain felt real. Corporal Danny Price was describing the guilt of living when his friend had died. But now he was going further, talking about the years after Kevin's death. The depression, the nightmares, the times he had considered ending his own life because the guilt was too heavy to carry. I went to therapy for 5 years, Danny said quietly. It helped some, but there are still days when I wake up and wonder why I deserve to be alive, why Kevin had to die so I could keep breathing. You never really get over something like that. You just learn to live with it. His words struck at something fundamental in the Zarvok psyche. They were a warrior race, proud and strong, but pride and strength meant nothing against the kind of psychological wounds Danny described. This was damage that couldn't be armored against or healed with technology. Jake Morrison had been talking for almost an hour now. His voice was growing hoarse, but he didn't stop. He spoke of other wars, other deaths, other failures. He described holding dying soldiers who called out for mothers who would never see them again. He talked about the smell of burned flesh, the sound of someone drowning in their own blood, the sight of bodies scattered across battlefields. Every human soldier carries memories like these, Jake said, and not just soldiers. Doctors who lose patients despite doing everything right. Parents who watch their children die from disease or accidents. Survivors of natural disasters who lost everyone they loved in minutes. We all have our traumas. We all have our nightmares. Admiral Krell finally found his voice, though it was weak and broken. Why are you doing this to us? What do you want? Jake's response was immediate and clear. I want you to leave. Take your fleet and go. Tell every other species in the galaxy what you found here. Tell them that humans don't need big guns or strong shields. We have something much more powerful. We have our history, our pain, our ability to survive the worst things imaginable, and we're willing to share it. You're weaponizing your own suffering, Krell said, understanding dawning on him. You're turning your traumas into tools of war. Yes, Jake admitted. And we hate doing it. Every person out here is being damaged by this. We're reopening wounds that never fully healed. We're reliving our worst moments. But we're doing it anyway because it's the only way to save our world from you. The simple honesty in Jake's voice was somehow worse than anger would have been. He wasn't gloating or celebrating. He was just stating facts, explaining what needed to be explained. We didn't want this fight, Jake continued. We would have been happy to meet you as friends, as equals. But you came here with weapons charged and threats ready. You gave us no choice. So we're showing you what it means to fight humans, not with technology or tactics, but with the one thing we have more of than any other species: suffering. Throughout the fleet, the same message was being delivered by 2,000 different voices. Some were calm like Jake, others were crying, a few were angry. But they all shared the same essential truth. Humans had survived horrors that would break most species, and now they were sharing those horrors with their would-be conquerors. The psychological impact was devastating. Zarvok warriors who had never questioned their empire's right to conquer were suddenly understanding what conquest really meant. They felt the pain of the conquered, the grief of those who lost homes and families. The neural transmitters made it impossible to distance themselves from these emotions. They experienced them directly, immediately, overwhelmingly. Part 5, the breaking point, came 90 minutes after the humans had begun their assault. Admiral Krell, his mind shattered by the weight of human suffering, made his decision. With trembling hands, he reached for the fleet-wide communication system. All ships, his voice cracked as he spoke. All Zarvok forces. Stand down. Deactivate weapons. Prepare for immediate withdrawal. Vesh stared at his commander in shock. Admiral, we can't just retreat. The Empire will consider this cowardice. They'll strip you of your rank, possibly execute you. Krell looked at his second-in-command with eyes that had seen too much. Better execution than another minute of this. I can't bear it anymore, Vesh. None of us can. Look at the crew. Vesh looked around the bridge. Hardened warriors sat at their stations with blank faces, tears streaming down their cheeks. Some rocked back and forth, holding themselves. Others stared at nothing, their minds temporarily broken by the emotional onslaught. This was an army that could no longer fight. Make the announcement, Krell ordered. We're leaving Earth space immediately. Jake Morrison heard the Admiral's words through his helmet radio. Relief flooded through him, but he didn't stop talking. Not yet. He needed to make sure the message was completely clear. You're making the right choice, Admiral, Jake said gently. But before you go, I need you to understand something. What you've experienced today, this is just a fraction of what humans carry with us every day. We've shared our worst memories with you, yes, but we live with these memories constantly. We don't get to jump away to hyperspace and leave them behind. He paused, making sure Krell was listening. When you return to your empire, when they ask you why you retreated, tell them the truth. Tell them that humans are dangerous not because of our weapons, but because of what we've survived. Tell them that any species that tries to conquer Earth will face the same thing you face today. We'll pour our suffering into their minds until they break. I will tell them, Krell promised weakly. I will make sure every species in the galaxy knows what happened here. Good, Jake said. And one more thing, Admiral. Take this lesson to heart. The next time you think about conquering a world, remember how it feels to be on the receiving end. Remember the pain you felt today. Maybe then you'll choose a different path. Across the fleet, the other human volunteers received the message that the aliens were retreating. Slowly, they began to fall silent, their mission complete. Many of them were crying. Some were shaking uncontrollably. All of them were exhausted, emotionally drained in a way that physical exercise could never achieve. In the control center, Amy Chen gave the order for retrieval. All volunteers begin return sequence. You've done it. Earth is safe. Dr. Marcus Webb immediately started monitoring the volunteers' vital signs as they turned their thrusters toward home. We're going to need massive psychological support for these people. The trauma they've reopened, the damage they've done to their own mental health, it's going to take years to help them recover. I know, Amy said quietly, but they saved the world, Marcus. They saved 7 billion people by sacrificing their own peace of mind. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Marcus agreed, but it doesn't make their suffering any less real. The Zarvok fleet began to move. Slowly at first, then with increasing speed, the massive warships turned away from Earth. Their weapons powered down. Their shields flickered and faded. Within 20 minutes, the entire fleet had jumped to hyperspace, leaving Earth's orbit empty once more. On the planet below, billions of people watched the alien ships disappear. They didn't know exactly what had happened up there in space. The governments would release an official statement later, carefully edited to avoid revealing too much about Project Shepard. But for now, all anyone knew was that the aliens had left without firing a single shot. In cities around the world, people poured into the streets, celebrating their unexpected survival. They danced and sang and held each other, releasing the terror they had been holding for hours. They didn't know the price that had been paid for their safety. They didn't know about the 2,000 volunteers who had torn open their own psychological wounds to save humanity. Jake Morrison was among the last to return to Earth. His shuttle landed at a military base in Nevada, where medical teams waited to check him over. As he removed his helmet, Katie Sullivan was there to greet him. "You did it, Jake," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You crazy old man, you actually did it." Jake didn't smile. His face was pale and drawn, his eyes haunted. "We did it," he corrected quietly. 2,000 of us. And Katie, we're going to need help, all of us. What we did up there, what we had to relive and share, it's going to stay with us for a long time. Katie nodded. "We've already set up counseling programs. The best therapists in the world are being brought in. Whatever you need, you'll have it." "What we need," Jake said heavily, "is for this to have been worth it, for humanity to learn from this. We showed the galaxy that we're willing to weaponize our own pain to survive. But I don't ever want to do that again. The cost is too high." Over the next few weeks, the volunteers of Project Shepherd returned to their lives as best they could. Some adapted quickly, grateful that their sacrifice had meaning. Others struggled, finding that reopening their traumas had made them worse instead of better. Therapy helped some. Medication helped others. Time, slowly, began to heal the worst of the wounds. Lieutenant Peter Hayes found himself unable to sleep for the first 3 weeks after the mission. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Sarah's face, felt her hand growing cold in his. His wife, Carmen, stayed up with him through those long nights, holding him when the memories became too much. "I thought I had made peace with her death," Peter told Carmen one night. "I thought I had processed it, moved on as much as anyone can. But forcing myself to relive it, to amplify those emotions and broadcast them, it was like losing her all over again." Carmen held him tighter. "But you saved the world, Peter. You saved our future. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counts for everything," Peter agreed. "But it doesn't make the pain any less." Sergeant Linda Brooks struggled with alcohol for a while after returning. The memories of her brother's death, combined with the other traumas she had shared, left her feeling hollow inside. It took 6 months of intensive therapy before she could function normally again. But she got there, slowly rebuilding her sense of self. Corporal Danny Price found an unexpected silver lining. Sharing his survivor's guilt with the aliens had forced him to confront it in a way he never had before. With the help of a skilled therapist, he began to understand that surviving wasn't something to feel guilty about. Kevin's death wasn't his fault. It took time, but Danny eventually found a measure of peace he hadn't known in years. Jake Morrison retired from the military 3 months after the mission. He spent his days writing, documenting what had happened and why. His memoir, titled The Price of Peace, became an international bestseller. He donated all the proceeds to mental health organizations supporting the other volunteers. In his book's final chapter, Jake wrote about the nature of strength. "We think of strength as the ability to endure hardship without breaking, but true strength is breaking and then finding the courage to keep going anyway." Every volunteer in Project Shepherd broke that day in space. We had to break to share our pain, but we also had to be strong enough to come back from that breaking. That's what makes us human. Amy Chen was promoted to Admiral and put in charge of all Earth's defensive operations. She made sure that Project Shepherd's technology was carefully controlled and monitored. The neural transmitters were locked away, their specifications classified at the highest level. She never wanted humanity to use that weapon again unless absolutely necessary. But she also made sure that the galaxy knew it existed. Information about Project Shepherd leaked, as she knew it would. Within a year, every major civilization in the galaxy had heard about what the humans had done to the Zarvok fleet. The story spread from species to species, growing in the telling. Part 6 months after the Zarvok fleet retreated, Earth received its first official contact from the Galactic Council. A delegation of 5 ships arrived, broadcasting peaceful intentions on every frequency. They stayed far from Earth, making no aggressive moves, waiting patiently for permission to approach. Amy Chen, now Admiral Chen, authorized their approach to a space station humanity had quickly built for diplomatic purposes. The station orbited Earth at a safe distance, equipped with enough weapons to defend itself, but small enough not to be threatening. The leader of the delegation was a being called Elder Morn. It looked like a tall tree with silver bark and branches that moved like arms. Its species, the Verdani, were known throughout the galaxy as peacekeepers and mediators. When it spoke, its voice was like wind through leaves, somehow translated into perfect English. "Greetings, people of Earth," Elder Morn said as the delegation met with human representatives in the station's conference room. "We come on behalf of the Galactic Council to discuss your species' future among the stars." Jake Morrison, brought out of retirement for this meeting, sat at the table alongside Amy, Katie Sullivan, and several other Earth leaders. He studied the alien carefully, looking for any signs of deception or hidden threats. "Before we discuss our future," Jake said slowly, "we need to know how the galaxy sees us. Are we being welcomed or feared?" Elder Morn's branches swayed in what might have been a sigh. "Both, General Morrison. Many species are impressed by your ingenuity and your determination to survive, but many are also terrified of what you did to the Zarvok. Some are calling for your species to be quarantined, isolated from the rest of galactic civilization." "Because we defended ourselves?" Amy asked sharply. "Because of how you defended yourselves," Elder Morn corrected. "The weapon you used against the Zarvok is unlike anything the galaxy has seen before. You didn't destroy their ships or kill their soldiers. You broke their minds. You made them experience suffering so intense that they had no choice but to retreat. That kind of power frightens people." Katie leaned forward. "We didn't want to use that weapon. We would have preferred to meet the Zarvok as friends, as equals, but they came with threats and violence. We did what we had to do to survive." "We understand that," Elder Morn assured her. "The Council has reviewed the situation carefully. The Zarvok were the aggressors. Your response, while shocking, was defensive in nature. You are not being condemned, but you are being watched." "Watched for what?" Jake asked. "To see what kind of species you truly are. Will you use your psychological weapons to conquer others, as the Zarvok used their physical weapons? Or will you prove that you can be peaceful members of galactic society?" Jake sat back, considering his words carefully. "Elder Morn, let me tell you something about humans. We've had the ability to destroy ourselves completely for over 80 years. Nuclear weapons that could turn our entire planet into a radioactive wasteland. And yes, we've come close to using them several times, but we haven't. Despite all our conflicts, all our wars, all our capacity for violence, we've somehow managed to hold back from total destruction." He paused, making sure the alien was listening. "That's what you need to understand about humanity. We know what it's like to suffer. We've done terrible things to each other throughout our history, but we've also learned from those mistakes. We've built international laws, peace treaties, organizations dedicated to preventing war. We're not perfect, but we're trying to be better." Elder Morn's branches moved in a pattern that seemed thoughtful. "The Council has debated your species for months. Some argue that any civilization capable of weaponizing suffering is too dangerous to integrate. Others point out that you showed remarkable restraint. You could have caused permanent mental damage to the Zarvok, but you didn't. You stopped as soon as they agreed to leave." "What did the Council decide?" Amy asked. "You will be granted provisional membership," Elder Morn announced. "You will have access to galactic trade, technology exchanges, and diplomatic relations. But there will be conditions." "Such as?" Katie asked. Elder Morn's voice became formal, as if reciting an official decree. "First, Earth must agree never to use its psychological warfare technology offensively. It may only be deployed in direct defense of your home system. Second, you must share your technological advances with the Council so we can understand what we're dealing with. Third, you will accept observers on your world to monitor your development and ensure compliance with galactic law." Jake exchanged glances with the other humans at the table. "Those terms are acceptable, but we have some conditions of our own." Elder Morn's branches stilled. "You are in no position to make demands, General, aren't we?" Jake smiled grimly. "You're here because you're afraid of us. Afraid of what we might do if we're isolated and left to develop on our own. You'd rather have us inside the Council where you can watch us than outside where we're unpredictable. So yes, we're in a position to make demands." There was a long silence. Then Elder Morn's branches moved in what might have been a laugh. "You are correct, General Morrison. State your terms. First, any observers on Earth are here as guests, not spies. They will be limited to specific areas and will not have unrestricted access to our military installations. Second, technology exchange goes both ways. If we're sharing our advances, we expect to receive knowledge in return. Third and most important, Earth will have full voting rights on the Council immediately, not after some probationary period. We won't be treated as second-class members. Elder Morn considered this for several minutes. Finally, it spoke. The Council will agree to your terms with one modification. The observers will report regularly on humanity's development, but they will focus on cultural and scientific progress, not military intelligence. Is that acceptable? It is, Amy confirmed. Then welcome to the galactic community, people of Earth, Elder Morn said. May your species find peace among the stars. The agreement was signed that day, and humanity officially joined the Galactic Council. The news spread across Earth within hours. People celebrated again, but this time the celebrations were more subdued. Everyone understood that this was just the beginning of a much longer journey. Over the next 5 years, Earth changed in ways no one could have predicted. Alien technology helped solve problems that had plagued humanity for decades. Clean energy became universal. Disease and hunger were virtually eliminated. Human life expectancy increased by 20 years. The benefits of galactic membership were undeniable, but there were challenges too. Some humans resented the alien observers, seeing them as occupation forces. Others worried that Earth was losing its identity by adopting alien cultures and technologies too quickly. There were protests, conflicts, and heated debates about humanity's place in the galaxy. Through it all, the memory of Project Shepherd remained. The 2,000 volunteers became known as the Shepherd Generation. Some became celebrities, giving speeches and interviews about their experiences. Others retreated from public life, preferring to process their trauma privately. A few, tragically, never recovered from what they had done that day in space. Jake Morrison lived to be 78 years old. He died peacefully in his sleep, surrounded by family and friends. At his funeral, Amy Chen gave the eulogy. Jake Morrison saved the world, she said to the gathered crowd. But more than that, he showed us what it truly means to be human. Not our capacity for violence or our cleverness with technology, but our willingness to sacrifice ourselves for the greater good. Jake and the other volunteers of Project Shepherd gave up their peace of mind to save Earth. We owe them a debt we can never fully repay. She paused, looking out at the faces in the crowd. Many were crying. But the best way we can honor their sacrifice is by making sure we never have to use that weapon again. By building a future where conflicts are resolved through dialogue, not through warfare. By proving to the galaxy that humans can be more than just survivors. We can be builders, creators, peacemakers. Lieutenant Peter Hayes attended the funeral with his wife Carmen and their adopted daughter Sophie. Sophie was 10 now, full of life and curiosity about the galaxy. She asked constant questions about the aliens, the Council, and the stars beyond Earth. After the funeral, Peter knelt down to Sophie's level. "Do you know why Uncle Jake was a hero?" he asked her. Sophie nodded seriously. "Because he saved the world. That's right. But do you know how he saved it?" Sophie shook her head. Peter chose his words carefully. He showed the bad aliens that hurting people is wrong. He made them understand what it feels like to lose someone you love, to be scared, to feel pain. And when they understood that, they decided to stop being bad. "So he taught them to be good?" Sophie asked. "In a way, yes," Peter agreed. "That's what humans do best, Sophie. We learn from our mistakes and try to teach others not to make the same ones." Sophie thought about this for a moment. "When I grow up, can I teach aliens to be good too?" Peter smiled, pulling his daughter into a hug. "You can teach anyone to be good, sweetie. That's what makes you human." The years continued to pass. Earth's position in the Galactic Council grew stronger. Humans proved to be skilled diplomats, often mediating disputes between other species. Their unique understanding of suffering made them empathetic negotiators.